We would rather wallow in misery and self-pity than be handed everything on a silver platter. It is our unique proclivity for destructive decisions that make us human. And we wouldn't give that up for anything, even heaven on earth. That is a quote from Dostoevsky in his book called Underground. I think this is why you consistently let yourself down. Making destructive decisions, that's just a part of human nature. There's this type of hedonic gravity that keeps pulling us into things that are pleasurable, exciting, and interesting. But it comes at a cost. And that cost is feeling guilty and ashamed about the things that we are doing. And I don't know about you, but I would rather not feel that way about myself. So if that sounds interesting, let's talk about how we can stop letting ourselves down and how to hold ourselves more accountable. In a world where it's never been easier to do anything, it has also never been easier to do nothing. That's a quote from Alex Hormozi, and I believe this would be true as well. I think that the world that we created over the last couple hundred years is a world optimized for pleasure and comfort. I mean, think about it. It wasn't that long ago that we had to go out into the wild and find, hunt, and kill our food. Now, if you had a connection to the internet, a bank account, and a mobile phone, you can order just about any takeaway that you want. And in addition to that, you can go and shop for any product that you want and it'll be delivered to you within a couple of days. We truly live in a time where everything that we want is in overabundance. We have an overstimulation of entertainment, and it is all on demand. Anything you feel, particularly negative emotions, you don't have to feel because there's always a distraction waiting for you to escape into more easily than dealing with your own emotions. One of the characteristics of the internet is that the lives that we see on social media is always going to be more interesting than the lives that we live ourselves, because that's just the way it is by design. We get to see every single second of our lives, but we only see the highlights that are cut up and strung together on social media. And so it's always going to act as that hedonic gravity trying to pull us in. And Dean Coe has a quote that echoes this quite well. You aren't disciplined because you keep putting yourself in environments that gives you a chance to be undisciplined. We know this is true, right? We all have those type of days where we're extremely productive throughout the entire day and we get a lot of things done, but then we get to the evenings and we let ourselves go. We indulge into the cheap pleasures and the cheap dopamine, stay up way too late, and fuck up the next morning. I know that happens to me quite regularly. It's because that we always have this desire for things to be interesting. We always do. And if you constrain yourself from having that throughout the day, it's going to blow out towards the evening when you're trying to chill out and relax. And so we need a better way. We need to find a way to be able to satisfy that need for things to be interesting and to blow off some steam, to release that entropy, while also not feeling like we're betraying ourselves. And is actually conducive to the lives that we actually want to live in terms of being productive and doing the things that we want to do. And I think if you found that balance, what you'll find is the hedonic gravity just has less force pulling you in. If we're able to find ways to make our days more interesting and enjoyable, then we'll be able to find that balance. But it comes down to being able to constrain ourselves in the right way. So we need to establish the constraints for both productivity and also pleasures throughout our day. So define to yourself what the non-negotiables are. For me, it is having hours in the morning that is just for deep focused work. I want to be able to write without distractions, and that means that I'm not allowed to use my phone at all until after that first work session. You would also want to define what pleasures are completely off limits. For example, if you're on a diet, you might want to decide that I don't want to eat any junk food. And so don't bring junk food into the house. You can't eat junk food that you don't have. Then there are some cheap pleasures that we enjoy doing, things that we don't necessarily want to cut out completely, but we find it easy to overindulge in it and get carried away with doing it. And I think the best possible constraints here is to not restrict yourself completely from it, but to give yourself an allowable time window to go do that thing. For example, I don't mind scrolling on my phone and watching some YouTube shorts. Now that's perfectly fine if it's done for a maximum of 30 minutes, but only after I've completed all the work I wanted to get done that day. And another example would be I really enjoy watching some anime. I'm watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood at the moment for the first time. And I really like the storytelling through that series. But I'm only allowing myself to watch it some days of the week, no earlier than 7 p.m. and no later than 9 p.m. And of course, it takes some discipline to actually be able to maintain these constraints. So that's for managing the cheap pleasures in your life. But I still think it's really important to prioritize some space and time for your week to go do things that you actually really do enjoy. Things that you find meaningful, a little bit challenging, because that's going to satisfy that urge for an interesting life in a much more fulfilling way. So making time in your week to go on walks while listening to a cool podcast, or going to do some Muay Thai training or rock climbing, or maybe playing some golf, whatever it is for you, it needs to be prioritized and you have to do it regardless of how you feel. But it needs to exist in the constraints of the work that you need to get done. An important caveat though, we also need to put constraints around our work, because it's very easy for me, for example, to not prioritize all of those more interesting hobbies that I want to find time to do and just get lost in the work that I'm doing. So both work needs to be constrained, productivity needs to be constrained, and so does fulfilling pleasures and also the interesting pleasures. And we need to hold ourselves accountable to these constraints. The number one way, in my opinion, to hold yourself accountable is to have severe consequences. You need to feel the pain. I have never hit the snooze button of my alarm on the morning that I needed to go catch a flight. And the reason why is because missing my flight is too much of a consequence, no matter how tired I might be. I remember listening to a Joe Rogan podcast where David Goggins was a guest, and he was talking about how he procrastinates sometimes. He says that, look, man, there's some mornings where I look at my shoes for 30 minutes thinking about what I'm going to do, and then I go run. The deal that Goggins had made with himself is so important to him that if he broke it, the result would be so painful that he just doesn't have any other choice. You can set up the consequence in any way that you like. I know that some people like to set up the consequence being a deal with their mates, that if you miss a day or you miss 2 days in a row, however you decide to define it and constrain it, then you have to send them some copious amounts of money. And surely that's going to be enough motivation for you to go do the things that you need to go do. A useful tactic that I learned from Chris Williamson is to position post-it notes around your living space that reminds you from your higher self about the things that you have committed to yourself that you're going to do. For example, if I come home from work on an afternoon and I know that I need to go for a walk, but I really don't feel like it, and I sat down on the couch here and I looked at the coffee table and I saw a post-it note saying, go do it, you always feel better after you do it, then to look at that thing and to not do it would be so painful that the only option I have is to go do it. And you can use the post-it notes in whatever way that you like. I made the commitment to myself, for example, to not have my phone in my bedroom when I'm going to go to sleep. So if I carry my phone into the room and I see a post-it note saying, take your phone out of the room, don't do it, you're doing the wrong thing, or something along those lines, then it's a reminder that I'm doing the wrong thing and I am likely not to do it. As a final reminder, we do these things. We want to hold ourselves accountable and we don't want to let ourselves down because we want to build the life that we actually want to live. And it's up to you to decide what that actually looks like. But that's all for today. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. See you in the next one. Bye.